Good evening, I'm Jeff Salkin. Welcome to Your Money and Business. We begin this week with tips for succeeding in perhaps the scariest part of the employment process, the job interview. Joining us is Elliot Lasson, an industrial and organizational psychology professor. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Jeff.
So, job interviews, how valuable are they actually? Are they predictive of how well an employee is going to do in the workplace?
Jeff, if the job interview is prepared in terms of the questions that the hiring manager or recruiter is asking, I think that it adds value, and research has borne that out as well, that the interview can add value beyond some of the other techniques that are used, such as standardized tests or personality inventories. So I do believe that interviews have their place.
So a good interview is a useful thing?
Yes.
Now, how does the interviewee succeed? What do they do to prepare?
Preparation is really the key. There are a variety of resources out there, including the organization's website. That's usually a good starting point. But dig deeper beyond just what you see on the homepage. There might be an annual report that could give some additional information. So there are resources on the company's side that you can look at. But there's also other intel if you have the opportunity to connect with somebody who's worked for the company or who does work in the company. And LinkedIn is also a good way of identifying some of the people that have connections to the company.
So it's not just about preparing to talk about how great you are as an applicant and your resume and everything you've done. You need to learn something about the company. Why?
Because when, for example, if I am an interviewer, when I've been an interviewer, the individuals that come in with that knowledge already about the company, they are in a position to answer the questions and connect what they bring to the table with our needs as a company. If an organization is a nonprofit and the applicant is talking about making money for the company, then that shows that the person might not be connected to the mission of the organization.
So you want to look like you did your homework.
Yes, and one of the things that I've recommended professionally is to prepare a one-page smart sheet. Many people approach the interview as kind of a closed book test, and they have their resume in front of them, but that's it. But having some of the key information that might be difficult to memorize, such as maybe some numbers or metrics, some information that one gleaned from a press release about what's happening with the company currently, and having that accessible to the interviewee at the time of the interview, I think goes a long way. And interviewers would not mind, because that just shows that the person prepared.
Yeah. How do you feel about the stock questions that everybody asks, supposedly? The introductory, tell us about yourself, going to the idea that tell us about some time that you failed, or what are your greatest shortcomings? Do you need to have a prepared stock answer for that stuff?
Well, the first question you mentioned, tell us a little bit about yourself, I think that is akin to what we refer to as the elevator speech. And in business, I think many people are familiar with what that concept is, kind of a 45-second description of what you've done, what you bring to the table. But as far as some of the other questions, first of all, when I coach companies on interviewing, I recommend not using those questions. Because one of the things that can happen, Jeff, is that if there's a question that's kind of off, then that is going to that question is going to be stuck in the mind of the interviewee throughout the interview. The interviewee is going to say, did I really answer that question right, the way that I should have? And that's going to be distracting from the other questions that are perhaps of more substance.
So you're not trying to stump the person from the other side. You want to draw them out. You want to learn about them.
Yes, and the questioning techniques that I'm an advocate of is asking about their past experience that's related to something in the job description, or creating a scenario that is somewhat realistic for this type of position. Let's say it's some sort of a dilemma that management has, and then ask the interviewee, how would you handle that situation? And that calls for a variety of knowledge and maybe emotional intelligence, and that is a very good use of the interview in getting that information as a manager.
How do you deal with it from the interviewee's standpoint if there's something on your resume that is a negative? If you were let go somewhere, you've been out of work for some period of time, you probably can't just hope that they don't ask about this gap here.
There are some ways of formatting a resume. One is called the functional resume, where you are trying to deflect attention, say, from a gap in one's employment. Sometimes, even with that, you're going to get that type of question. There might be some legitimate answers for that. It could be the downturn of the economy, or it could be someone who took off time to raise a family, or even care for a parent. There are some legitimate answers to that. I would try to not dwell on that too much, but really focus on what the person brings to the table and try to shine in that way.
How much do you focus on the nonverbal stuff, the clothing, posture, that sort of thing?
I do think that that's important from the perspective of the interviewee, because many times I hear that the company is very casual, so why should I dress up for the interview? But I think when you prepare by your grooming, by your dress, you're kind of respecting the process, and I think that definitely will win some points from the perspective of the interviewer.
And along the same lines, absolutely don't be late.
Don't be late. Make sure you have a charged cell phone. Make sure you know where to park. Traffic in the Baltimore-Washington area is ubiquitous, so there's nothing worse than hearing, oh, I was stuck in traffic, because you could say that 365 days a year. So definitely have all your pragmatics taken care of, directions, which office location you're going to, so that you're on time. I recommend 15 minutes ahead of time. That should be your target. So if you're setting your Waze or your GPS, plan to get there 15 minutes ahead of time. That allows you to freshen up, take a look at your notes, so you're not just running in sweating to the interview.
Maybe this is like over game planning it, but if the HR department or whoever you're talking to offers a range of times, we have these 5 different appointments. Do you want to be first thing in the morning? You probably don't want to be the last appointment on a Friday afternoon when people are mentally out the door. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you should know yourself. And if you're a morning person and you are good to go, you get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you go to the gym, and then you're ready, then I would maybe take the first appointment of the day that you're given. If you feel that you're not so much of a morning person, I would go with early afternoon. If you can avoid late afternoon, that's probably the best thing, because whether it's a Friday afternoon or even a Tuesday afternoon in the summer, when everybody's looking at the time to get out to the Little League game of their son or something like that, you want to try to get something that's earlier in the afternoon.
And the other almost mandatory thing is a good thank you note. Doesn't have to be a long thank you note, but do you need to send one?
I recommend sending an email within 1 business day of the interview. And the thank you note should be gracious. It should show gratitude for the opportunity to meet, but also to say something specific about what you liked about the company. And I think if you say something specific rather than general, I think that is going to add to your credibility as a candidate.
Professor Elliot Lasson, thanks for subjecting yourself to this interview.
My pleasure.
We appreciate it.